It's the Money Guy way, how to buy a car the right way.
I love it, Brian. I'm so excited about this because people ask us all the time, hey guys, I hear you say that automobiles, cars are financial napalm for your financial situation. So I want to do it right. I want to make sure I'm doing it the right way. We're going to walk through it today and even do a bit of a deep dive on how you should approach that process.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, we're going to answer the question everybody has been poking me with. Is Tesla a luxury car? So stick around and you'll get all the answers. But here's the big thing. I know for a lot of us, when we're building our financial foundation, we first have to make sure we can get to the JOB.
That's right.
Because that's what's going to generate the income that allows us to have the margin, the discipline that creates the money to invest for the long term. And we have found from our research, 73% of commuters have to have transportation.
Yeah, it's no longer, cars, we think about them as, we like them and we can be car people. But at the end of the day, transportation is necessary. Unless you live in a metropolitan city where there's public transportation or it's walkable, you have to have a vehicle to be able to get you to the thing that allows you to produce income. However, vehicles, while they can be helpful and they can help you get to your job, there are some inherent problems associated with
them.
And
this is why you need to focus on this. First of all, you have to borrow money. A lot of people have to borrow money. The majority of people are borrowing money and paying interest to make this happen. 84% of new cars and 40% of used cars were financed in 2022.
Not only that, when you buy an automobile, they get less expensive, less valuable through time. They depreciate. So what you pay for it today does not necessarily mean it's going to be worth that tomorrow. So it is an asset that consistently and steadily loses value through time.
And then you have to pay to maintain and insure it. And think about this. I've been, as we've been doing car shopping and other things, I was surprised to find the variance, meaning that there's a lot of affordable brands that maintenance is only a few $100s a year. However, a lot of the luxury brands are thousands of dollars a year just for maintenance. Same thing can be said for insurance. If you look at the cost to insure, brands and the type of car you're buying has a big impact.
And then obviously the way that you fuel the car matters. For internal combustible engines, you have to pay for gasoline to run those. Even if you're driving an electric vehicle or a hybrid, there are costs associated with the fuel that you put those in. So that is something that has to be factored in when you think about the true cost of ownership for the automobile.
So let's talk about how do we do this well, but also if you have screwed up somewhere along the line, how do you fix it so you know you're on the right path financially?
So the very first thing we want you to do is we want you to go out to moneyguy.com/resources. We actually have a car buying checklist where that way, if you are in the market to purchase a new car, this will help you know the things that you need to know before you go into the purchase. And so when you go download it, the very first thing you're going to see is step number one or point number one or idea number one. Know if you can pay cash for the automobile.
I think, we get a bad rap in the fact that people know us for 23A because we do have the 23A rule and we'll get into what that means. But I want you to know the default, if I had my preference for what is the way you should purchase a vehicle and what is the way that the majority of our clients purchase vehicles, it's actually with cash. So know first, can you pay cash for this vehicle?
And it makes the car buying process a whole lot more simple when you do that. The other thing that can really help you when you go through the car buying process is know what you want before you go to the dealership. If all you do is show up with an appetite for a new car, there's a very good chance that you're going to lead yourself to a bad decision because car salesmen are there for one job and one job only, is to sell you an automobile. So make sure you do your research before you get there. Know what you're looking for, what type of automobile you need, what your numbers are. And if you can go, and this is what I always tell my wife, whenever we go first, we always go to the dealership one time just to test drive. I say, hey, sweetheart, we are not going to buy. We're not making a purchase decision. We're just going to figure out what it is that we like so that when it's time for us to buy, we know exactly what it is that we're looking for.
Yeah, my hope is after you watch this show, you're going to hear what Bo said. You will show up at the dealership to test drive, but the only other time you're going to show up at the dealership is actually to purchase the vehicle, actually pick up. You've already purchased it. You figured it out, everything, without even being on the dealership because you did your research and you did this well. Tune in. We're going to show you how to do that the best way.
All right, Brian. So now let's talk about the big one. And this is the one you said. We are kind of known for this. If you are someone who cannot pay cash or you're not paying cash for an automobile and you have to finance, we are of the opinion there is a right way to do that and a wrong way to do that. And the right way to buy an automobile is to follow our 23-8 rule.
Yeah, this rule, if you're wanting to know the why, is because we recognize all the faults and problems of how vehicles can blow up your financial life. So we said, hey, if you're trying to create a bridge to reliable transportation, and I'm talking about Corolla, Civic, the most basic level of transportation, this does not apply to luxury. If you're thinking luxury vehicle, 23.8 doesn't apply. You have to do same as cash. But Bo, actually walk them through. What does 23.8 represent?
Yeah, it's very, very simple. When we say 20, we mean we want you to put 20% down on the purchase of that automobile. So whether you're buying a new car or a used car, we want you to put 20% down. The other thing we want you to do is you cannot finance it for any more than 3 years or 36 months. That is the maximum amount of time you can finance. So right now, when we hear that the average car loan is something like 69 months, we have lost the plot. 3 years is your limit. And the last one, the 8 in 23.8, is that your monthly payments should not be more than 8% of your monthly gross income. And that's not each car payment, that is all of the automobile payments in your household cannot exceed 8%. But there are two caveats that we always mention when it comes to the 23.
And I've already given one, is that you cannot apply this to luxury brands and vehicles. And the second thing is, I never, ever, ever want your car payment to exceed what your monthly investments are. If you're actually focusing on getting that $1,000 car payment like we just did content on, that is a disaster if you're not saving more than what that car payment is.
All right, Brian. So there are people out there that are listening that say, guys, I just found you. I'm a brand new listener. I love what you guys are saying. And I hear this 23.8, but I've got bad news. I made a decision before I found you guys. And I am in a situation now where I'm not adhering to 23.8. Maybe the payment is more than what I should be paying on the car. Maybe I finance for longer. Maybe I didn't put 20% down. So you're asking the question, I did not follow 23.8. What are my choices? How do I right this ship?
Yeah, it really comes down, you have two options. I mean, let's talk about the first one. You got to first get your numbers in line. Now, let's kind of talk about this, Bo. This is, if we were using a case study, because we know a lot of people are financing cars 69, even 72 months, and you hear that we're doing 23.8, and you're like, whoa, my $500 car payment would, and in order to get it on track, I would have to pay something like maybe $913 a month.
Yep.
That seems like a dramatic change, but you do have that option. But a lot of you are like, well, wait a minute. If I have to go from $500 a month to $900 a month to get within 23.8, what if that blows up my 8% of income? What does that mean?
Yeah, then you have a problem. Well, then you have to do a second assessment. And this is what you have to determine. Where am I in my financial order of operations? Brian, you want to hold the thing for me? Where am I? If you are someone and you're in step 7, you're in step 8 of the financial order of operations, and you're saving 25% for the future, we're going to give you a pass and say, hey, if you break that 8%, that's okay, because above 25% savings, you get to choose what you do with your dollars. And one of those things might be to aggressively pay down this debt to right the ship. However, if you are someone who is earlier in your financial order of operations, you're not in step 7 or 8, then you might have to make some difficult decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not fully maxing out your Roth IRA or your employer's retirement plan because of your car payment, you know what? I think that leads to option 2 on how you get yourself out of the ditch, and that is you got to ditch the car.
Now, this is cold water. This isn't super fun. No one wants to hear this, but it can literally be financial napalm for your financial life. So if you are in a car that you cannot afford, the very best decision you might be able to make is to get out of that automobile, get in something that you can afford, and start building actual wealth for the future. Not just looking cool in the car that's too expensive.
And time is of the essence. I mean, look, car prices are falling right now. Used car prices are falling, but they're still currently elevated to where they were pre-pandemic. So I think you have a moment in time really to kind of measure twice, cut once, and see if this can be the way to get your financial life back in order.
And Brian, you already mentioned this. We've recently done a show that said, $1,000 car payments, are they the new norm? And this is what we uncovered. What seems like a very simple, meaningless decision that you can make around your car could cost you nearly $1 million in retirement if you get this out of whack. So you want to make sure that you are approaching this in an intelligent manner so that your future self is not so upset that you didn't make the hard decision when you were young.
Yeah, so that lets us move into the next phase of the show, which is how do you make the decision between a new car or a used car? Because look, we all love that new car smell, and we love the thought that you were the only person that has owned this vehicle. But that doesn't mean that that's always the right decision for you.
Well, normally we love recommending that you buy a car that's somewhere between 4 to 6 years old. And the reason is very logical. We know that cars depreciate substantially in the early years of their life. On average, an automobile drops by 9% when you drive it off the lot. And in the first 5 years of ownership, it can drop as much as 60%. So if you can buy a car between that 4-year and 6-year realm, historically, you're letting someone else pay for that depreciation and you're getting a great deal. However, we're living in a very unique place right now where the historical norm is not necessarily what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I was actually shocked when we were doing show prep on this. We still have some weird things that are going on in the marketplace where a lot of used cars, especially when you look at the Hondas, the Toyotas, and even some other brands, you're seeing that used car prices are actually right in spitball distance of actually what a new car is. So you need to pay attention to that. But I do think this is very viable if you are needing a larger vehicle, if you're needing a cheaper car, say sub $15,000. There's still ways to go use the marketplace, the used car marketplace, because a lot of these cars have gotten to the point of reliability that they can go 200,000 to 300,000 miles. So look on the 2 year. My favorite rule back when I first graduated college was to go buy a 2 or 3 year old used car because you could get a little bit of variability. Right now, though, you might have to go older than that. You might have to get beyond that 6 years or higher mileage to actually take advantage of the used car opportunity.
And so if what we're saying is, okay, used cars have now become, or at least gently used cars, are now as expensive as new cars, it's a difficult decision to make. Okay, I can pay the same for a 2 to 3 year old used car as I can pay for a new car. Perhaps I should buy the new car. So then that leads into how much car can I afford? If I am going to approach this and I want to adhere to 23.8, what does that mean practically? Based on my income, based on where I am in my financial journey, what kind of car am I looking at? So we wanted to break this out by different income stratifications to talk about where should you be thinking. And so if we just start right at the very beginning, let's say that you're making $40,000 a year and you're going to finance either a new or a used car, you can afford a monthly payment of about $267 a month. That means that the maximum car price you can afford, again, assuming 23.8, is a $10,900 car. So about $11,000 automobile. There's a really good chance to find something for $11,000. You're probably going to be looking at a used car. You're probably not going to find a new automobile, but like you said, with reliability, they can go to 200, 300,000 miles now. You can still find deals out there like that.
Yeah, I think you're going to definitely have to lean into the used car marketplace. And that leads to the next price point, which is $60,000. Now, this is, even though you're now making 50% more money, $60,000, your car payment has now increased up to $400 a month. But unfortunately, we're still in a place where $16,436 is the maximum price of a car. That's still, once again, going to lean heavily into the used car marketplace.
But now what you're able to do is maybe instead of finding that car that's 6, 7 years old, maybe you can find one that's 3, 4, 5 years old. So you are able to move up the used car spectrum. Well, then, as your income continues to grow, and once your household income hits around $80,000, if you're going to follow 23.8, you can afford a maximum monthly payment of $533 per month. That means that the maximum car price you could afford is somewhere probably around $21,900. Well, if we're just looking at new automobiles, now we're talking about cars like maybe a Hyundai Elantra or a Toyota Corolla. You can actually find the base level of those models inside of that price range.
Yeah, and a lot of you are probably saying, why did y'all list models for $80,000 and above, but you didn't for $80,000 and below? It's because, look, there's a lot of variability on used cars.
That's right.
So, it depends upon mileage, options, brands, and so forth. However, when we get to the new car marketplace, there is enough data out there that we could actually look at what are the price points of brand new cars so we could actually use real world examples so you could actually visualize how far your money could go.
Okay, so now let's look at the next income strata. If you're now a household making $100,000, well, now the monthly car payment you could afford is $667 per month. That would buy a car that's a little over $27,000. Well, now you've opened up the new car spectrum. Now you're talking about Honda Accords, Toyota Camry, Chevy Equinox, Nissan Rogue. There are a number of different size and styles of automobile. Again, this is if you are strictly adhering to 23.8. Obviously, if you have more of a down payment, you can influence this decision one way or the other. But now you are starting to see where the realm of possibilities lie.
And then let's close out with the last category. And I'll tell you why this is the last category on this list. We have $120,000 worth of household income. This is a maximum car payment of $800 a month. You could actually buy a car around $32,871. Now this opens up the Honda CR-V, the Toyota RAV4, the Hyundai Santa Fe, and the Ford Escape. So this is the first time we start seeing SUVs on the price list. But I do want to tell you, the reason this is the end of the list, I do think once you get beyond this level of income, I really want to encourage you to go back to leaning heavily towards paying cash for your vehicle. It is known behavior that millionaires do not finance their cars. So, and once you're in the higher income situation, the bigger thing I'm always trying to encourage you is not to let your ego or just the higher income to persuade you to go much higher on the what you think will be perceived as a nicer car to the detriment of the financial order of operation and what you can save and invest for the future.
Yeah, Brian, we get this all the time. Someone will say, hey, I did the mathematics and 23.8, I can afford a $2,500 car payment. Well, just because $2,400 on a car payment falls into 28 does not mean you are doing what you're supposed to be doing. At incomes that level, I agree with you 100%. You ought to be paying cash for your cars.
Remember, 23.8 is about reliable transportation. We're talking Corolla, Civic. We're not talking about back when Toyota had the Land Cruisers and those type of things. Just because it was a Toyota doesn't mean it was actually an affordable car or reliable car. It was not entry level. And that's the big thing I want people to know. 23.8 is a bridge to reliable transportation. That's actually a great segue into something you guys have been blowing me up about. I even get, I don't know if they're called tweets anymore, X's, whatever you want to call what was formerly known as Twitter, when you guys shout out at me and say, guys, I was just at a Tesla dealership and they had a big old sign out front talking about that Teslas might be a lot more affordable than you realize. That leads to the question, and we're going to cover it today because you've asked for it. Is Tesla a luxury brand?
So, Brian, we all know you love Tesla. You're a huge fanboy. You've been a purchaser of their automobiles. And so I want you to speak to this. So we know that there are a couple of different models of Teslas. There's the S, and there's the X, and there's the 3, and there's the Y. And you said, hey, when it comes to thinking about this, there's some stuff that we can immediately rule off the table. Like when we're thinking about Tesla being a luxury brand, we're not really talking about all Teslas together. We have to talk about specific models, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, this whole thing is kind of murky. And let me tell you why. Because, of course, we have the purchase price. But as we talked about just cars in general, there's more that goes on beyond the purchase. We've got the cost of maintenance. We've got the cost of insurance. We've got the cost of fuel. All these things cloud the water. And then you throw a federal tax credit on top. And you're like, whoa, what does this do to the financial equation? So we were like, you know what? This smells like a great opportunity to have a just case study on figuring out where does it fall if you did a price comparison. So let me tell you, this is going to take you through like a nice, juicy, romantic novel because it's going to take you one way and then it's going to take you another. So let's first talk about the purchase price. Well, how does this take us?
Let me ask you this. When we talk about purchase price, though, there is one specific kind of Tesla we're talking about, right? So we're not talking about the Model S. We're not talking about the Model
You
A.
want to take only, when we talk about sexy, when we talk about the S, when we talk about the 3, when we talk about the X, and of course the Y, you're trying to figure out, are there any of them that are luxury or is there any of them that are actually non-luxury? If you're trying to put me on the spot, I will tell you there's probably only one that I think fits into this case study.
That we can have this conversation around.
And that is the 3. So it's the E of the sexy. So we can look at that. And that's what we did do. So that means you're not getting the Gulf wing doors or the X-wing doors as they call them. You know, you're not getting that. But it is something if you want to consider diving into the Tesla marketplace, Model 3 might surprise you.
So let's look at some different luxury brands versus what we consider to be non-luxury and see where the Model 3 falls in. So if we think about the entry-level BMW, the BMW 3 Series, MSRP for a BMW base-level, entry-level 3 Series is $44,500. Well, then we look at the Mercedes-Benz A-Class, it's $33,950. I think we can all agree those are considered luxury brands. Well, then we look at the more affordable end of the spectrum, the non-luxury end of the spectrum. Honda Civic with MSRP comes in right at $23,950. And then the Toyota Corolla base level entry model comes at $21,700. So right off the bat, when we think about the tax credit that's available if you buy an electric vehicle specifically, the Model 3 base level, no add-ons. There's like what is it? You can have kit drive for you or whatever. Self-driving.
Full self-driving.
Doesn't have that stuff. You don't have those add-ons. But with the tax credit, the total cost of the car is $32,740. So, Brian, right here, it seems to me, and I'm just kind of looking at the numbers, it seems like it's kind of in line with the Mercedes.
Well,
right? That's what I'm seeing right now.
Let me clarify this, because when I look at this graph, I will tell you, by no means does it look like it fits in the same ballpark as the Honda Civic and the Toyota Corolla. I mean, it looks like it is definitely a good bit more expensive by if you look at the Corolla, it's over $10,000 more expensive. But I think the luxury is actually a little misleading, and the fact that now the BMW 3 Series has got $44,500. The Mercedes-Benz A-Class is $33,950. That looks very similar to the Tesla Model 3, but we all know the Mercedes-Benz, like all the German European cars, they're going to charge you extra for lug nuts.
Oh,
if you want lug nuts and tires on there, they're going to charge you a little bit extra. So I guarantee you don't walk out with a Mercedes-Benz for less than $40,000. But I do think it does show the Tesla Model 3 is substantially more than the Civic or Corolla, so it better have something up its sleeve to kind of consider and continue this conversation.
Now, as a Tesla owner, Brian, one of the things you've always told me is, Bo, you wouldn't believe how easy this thing is to own. I mean, I go home and I plug it in and I don't have to remember oil changes and I don't have to have the transmission flush and I got to make sure that I rotate the tires and maybe I got to think about brake pads every 400 million miles, but that's it. I don't have to think about a whole lot. So it certainly sounds like as a Tesla owner, maintaining this car is a little bit easier than maintaining some other automobiles.
Well, I think it's interesting. Look, we live here right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And anybody who's been in this geographic area, we have foothills or rolling hills. So in Georgia, brakes would last forever. I mean, I felt like you wouldn't even have to think about replacing your brake pads until you were probably right under 100,000 miles on your car. You moved to Tennessee, and I remember with my wife's car, we were changing brake pads before she hit 40,000 miles because you're just riding your brakes and everything else around here trying to go up and down these hills. Meanwhile, with a Tesla, because it's 1 foot driving with the regenerative braking and things like that, a Tesla will likely not have to change brake pads for like 300,000 plus miles. So, I mean, just stuff like that doesn't happen. There's no oil in it. So I was shocked when I first got my Tesla. There is zero. The only maintenance I had on it was to basically put washer fluid. I mean, did I run the washer fluid out and did I rotate the tires? That was it. It kind of shocked me. And then the fuel expense was another big shocker, because I would every weekend, I'm out there waiting in the Jimmy Carter Costco gas lines so I could save my wife on the premium gas that I have to put in her European car. You have to wait 15 minutes to gas it up, and save a few extra bucks on that. Meanwhile, the Tesla, I just plug it in every night. And I knew for every time I was spending $50 to $60 on a tank of gas for my wife, I was spending $10 on the Tesla. That stuff kind of added up. So we wanted to go a step beyond the purchase price and say, what happens when you take into account not only the purchase price, but also the maintenance and repairs, the insurance, as well as the fuel costs? It kind of shook things up a little bit.
And when we said, okay, let's look at this, not just in year one, let's look at over 10 years of ownership. So when we take that same BMW 3 Series, when we factor in the initial cost plus the cost of ownership over 10 years, that automobile is actually going to cost a little over $96,000. When we look at the Mercedes-Benz A-Class that comes in at $79,500, remember, we assumed that you could get out of the dealerships at the base level MSRPs. It's still up for debate if you could actually do that. So we're trying to give them a nod and make the comparison work. Honda Civic, cost of ownership in first 10 years, $58,785. Toyota Corolla, $55,500. And when you factor in the maintenance, the cost of ownership over 10 years, the Tesla Model 3 with the tax credit comes in at just over $63,600. So pretty stinking close to the Honda Civic and the Corolla.
So here's what we're going to say. It's obviously more expensive than the Civic or Corolla, but substantially more affordable than the other entry-level luxury brands. So I will say, drum roll, I know you're looking for it. I think that the base level Model 3 with the tax credit, that's carrying a lot of weight here, is something that can be qualified for 23.8 with the caveat that we've got some Model 3 rules.
Yeah, there's some Model 3 rules we want you to follow along with. We've already said this. The base Model 3 Tesla is not a luxury car. If that's the assumption that we're going to make, you need to know some things. Here's the first one. Any upgrades, it becomes a luxury. So that means you start putting the fancy tires on it, you start doing full self-driving, you start doing any of the other upgrades to the performance, any of that kind of stuff. If you do that, all of a sudden it becomes a luxury automobile.
Well, yeah, but think about it. It's on the razor-thin margin there of the fact that as soon as you add the $15,000 full self-driving, it kind of blows this math up a little bit. So that doesn't work. The other thing that we wanted to make sure you didn't overlook is that this is one of those things is that you still, annual income with the tax credit is around $110,000 to $120,000.
So you still be making a pretty good living in order for this to even fall inside the 23A
You cannot
realm.
blow up the financial order of operations. You have to have a pretty good amount of money coming in to even qualify for this Tesla Model 3 to work with 23.8.
And the other thing that we assume is that when you get that tax credit, it goes towards the loan in order to make this affordable. If you decided not to put the tax credit towards the loan, your income would actually need to be higher to justify the 23A because the tax credit doesn't come out right immediately.
There is an honorable mention that's something that didn't make it in here because we were primarily talking about a brand new Model 3. Under the current legislation, if you buy a used Tesla that's $25,000 or less from a dealership, there's potential you could qualify for a $4,000 tax credit. So these Model 3s have been around since 2018. There is a chance, actually late 2017, I got my original one in early 2018, but they've actually been around since 2017. You really could potentially pick up a used Tesla with some of these tax credits, and it would very much be in the running for the price of a used Corolla.
I love what you just said right there, Brian. Even when it comes to thinking about Teslas, thinking about these cars that you love so much, anytime we make an automobile decision, there are some things that we should do. I mean, right there, you just walk through, okay, well, am I going to buy a new one or am I going to buy a used one? Or, okay, I need to understand there's a tax credit that's involved with this. Anytime you begin to think about an automobile you're going to purchase, there are some things you want to make sure you do. Number one, you want to make sure that you do your research.
Yeah.
Just like you said right there, hey, if you buy a used Tesla and you pay less than this amount and these are the years that it happened, then this will be the tax credit. That's part of the research you should know to equip yourself to know what kind of car you're going to buy. If you're thinking about buying a different type of brand, you should know the different trim levels and the different safety features and what you're getting with this automobile versus what you're getting with this automobile. Make yourself an educated consumer because the more educated you can be, the better the decision you'll make when it comes to making that car purchase.
Yeah, I mean, I love about technology and the world we live in now. If you want to, guys, I want you to eventually go test drive once you settle, but you can do so much research beforehand. My wife and I were watching YouTube videos on cars that she was thinking might be her next transition car. And I love the fact that there are actually people out there who will tell you, hey, if you consider this vehicle, the thing you might not understand, especially with luxury brands, is that once they're out of warranty, that they're known for this transmission issue or this drive shaft issue or this problem with the engine that is actually a $4,000, $6,000 repair. To hear that stuff is just so valuable because it might lead you away from making a detrimental decision that on paper initially would look really good. There's also great comparison websites. Think about, you can also find out what invoice price is. Now that car prices, they're still not back to where they were pre-pandemic, but they are getting better. You ought to at least know the difference between the MSRP versus what the invoice, if there's any holdbacks or other dealer incentives that are out there. And then I love when you can go get experience shares from other buyers. There are sites that are out there that will tell you kind of experiences, what prices paid. Use those online reviews to kind of help you guide making the best decision for your life.
I love it, Brian. In addition to doing your research, another thing that you can do is make sure that you explore your options. Just because you're buying a new automobile, you're in the market for a new automobile, doesn't mean you have to buy it within 10 miles of your current house. When my wife and I were buying our last automobile, we recognized that that specific car was super oversubscribed here in our area. People were way overpaying for it. So one of the things that we did is we actually looked out to Alabama, and I was able to call a dealership there, get them to sell me the automobile for like $7,000 to $8,000 less than what I could have bought it here for. And for $100, they shipped it to me. So it has been much, much easier to look in other geographies to find the automobile you're looking for.
Yeah, I think this is the greatest time because one of the cool things on every website for all the dealerships, if you type in your zip code for the manufacturers, it's going to tell you what dealerships are in the area and also what inventory they have on their lots. So what I like to do is, and I use Google to figure out what are the zip codes for certain areas where I find out dealerships are, type that in as my own zip code, see what the dealership has in inventory, and then once I find out 2 or 3 dealerships have the exact same car that I want, that meet all my needs, it's time to get to business, because here's what I found out. Bo, you said it. Here in the Nashville area, people have more money than they have common sense. So when you go and shop for cars here in the Nashville area, they don't want to make a deal.
No.
But when you call Huntsville, Alabama or Bozeman, Alabama,
They're
like you did, they were ready to work with us, make the deal, do the extra things, give you the floor mats, give you some extra oil changes. Not that we use that because it was too far away, but still it was nice that it was to be appreciated as a customer. Don't be scared of that. Now, let me give Bo a compliment. I actually had to drive 2 hours to get to Huntsville. Bo was smart enough to ask the question. I never asked the question, can I pay a delivery fee, or are you willing to bring this vehicle to me? You paid $100.
$100. Oh, Jimmy drove it up to
your house and delivered it to your front door, and you signed the paperwork. That's brilliant. So make sure you explore your options and make sure you take advantage of the technology of seeing how many vehicles meet your needs and put people against each other.
You know, another thing you can do is you don't have to buy from a dealership. Again, the internet, technology, social media has made it so easy. It's not incredibly difficult to buy from a private party. You can go look on Facebook Marketplace, or you can do some auto trader type research to find someone who is selling a car that you're looking for. And if you're dealing private party, it's not going to be incredibly difficult to work out a deal that might work really well for both of you. I know the last automobile that I bought, I ended up buying it from a buddy. He was upgrading. I got a good deal. He sold the car quickly. It worked out fantastic. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah, by the way, Bo and I have been buying and selling cars to each other for years. It is one of those things where I think if you find out that there's a friend or a family member that is selling a car that works well for your needs, there's nothing wrong with finding out, hey, what was the trade-in value? Can I give you the sales tax adjustment on top of the trade-in value? Make them whole, because remember, you usually do get an offset on the trade-in from the sales tax. So it is one of make them whole on that, but you might end up with a unique opportunity to give the best of both worlds for both of you, meaning that they get the same value they would have gotten on trade-in, but you got a great deal on a car, because we all know trade-in value is less than private party as well as market value.
And then if you are going to buy private party, again, you want to make sure that you're responsible. Make sure you take it to a mechanic, have someone check out the automobile, make sure you know what you're buying so that you can make an informed purchase decision when you do that. And do some research. Look around. See what the KBB value is. Look at how much you can buy it on Costco or Vroom, or how much CarMax. That way, you can have a number of different prices and arrive at a price that makes sense for you as the buyer. Or if you're selling, you know how much you should consider selling it for a private party.
Yeah, and if you're buying new, look, I love to pride myself that I'm a great do-it-yourself buyer and I'm going to get the best deal. But if you're one of those people, you're just not going to put the time in, at least talk to your local credit unions, go to the local Costco. A lot of these companies will have buying services where you ought to at least see what that price is versus you just going in there. If you're not going to put the effort in, this at least gives you a better chance to use their volume purchasing to get you the best deal.
So not only should you do your research, not only should you explore your various options, the last thing you need to make sure you do is advocate for yourself. There's an entire industry set up for sellers of automobiles to sell you the automobile to make as much profit for themselves or their dealership as possible. You want to be the advocate on the other side of that equation. So make sure you're asking the difficult questions and don't just assume that because they tell you there's a price that you should pay, it is in fact the price that you have to pay.
Yeah, and don't forget, you got to check the numbers. I mean, because what somebody tells you over the phone or even emails to you, you might find when you get to actually purchase the car, the numbers have changed or tweaked a little bit. Don't fall for that stuff, because that is a typical tactic I don't want you to fall prey to. And then also remember, this is something I found. In the past, we always heard cash was king on buying cars. You will get the best deal. Unfortunately, there's been a trend where more and more dealerships have become, the profit has come from the financing more than actually selling the product. So I found on my wife's last car, even though I was going to pay cash for it, at the last moment I found out, look, they were going to cut me another $1,200 to $1,500 off the purchase price if I was willing to finance it for all of 4 months, because it allowed them to qualify for some type of incentive or something that the manufacturer was offering. So don't shortchange just looking at all the different ways that you can buy this car, including maybe financing for a small period of time to get the best deal possible.
Car buying is not the most fun process in the world. And frankly, if you make a bad purchase decision, it can cost you huge sums of money later in life. So you want to make sure you're doing it the right way. If you've not checked out our car buying checklist, go to moneyguide.com/resources, download that. Let it be a tool that helps you make a wise financial decision when you purchase your next car.
Now, I want to be kind of your sage uncle here who gives you the advice. I know vehicles are one of those things that in the moment you can get emotionally excited about it. Keep yourself grounded. You are looking for reliable transportation unless you're on step 8 of the financial order of operations. You're not looking for the flashy. You're not looking for the thing that will give you the exhilarating rush every time you drive it. Save that for the abundance goals or the prepaid future expenses of step 8 of the financial order of operations. If you can understand the value of every dollar that comes into your management, you'll be much more prepared to make the right decision, not only for you to get to your job, to build wealth, but also for your emotional and behavioral stability. Because this is the big thing I want you to take away. It is so much better to be rich than just to look rich. So make sure you invest in yourself and maximize every moment. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen, Money Guy Team, out.